Hi, I'm Chuck Wachendorfer, and I'm a results leader.
You're listening to ResultsLeader.fm. Being a thought leader is easy. Getting results is hard. This show is for the results leader who lives and dies by their results. Here is your host and Chief Results Leader, Jonathan Rivera.
You are listening to another episode of ResultsLeader.fm. Welcome to the show. If you've been here before, welcome back. So glad that you're here. And as always, we have another amazing interview with a results leader who is out there getting results for his clients. Today, Mr. Chuck Wachendorfer joins us. He's an executive coach, a keynote speaker, and soon to be author. This episode is a supersized episode on building leaders. So let's jump into it. Chuck, welcome to the show. Are you ready to rock this thing?
I am. Thanks for having me.
All right, brother. Let's start off with an easy one. What book have you given most as a gift?
Recently would be a book by a guy named James Clear called Atomic Habits. It's all about stopping bad habits and starting good ones. And I think it breaks down the steps to behavioral change one way or the other.
Excellent book. I've read that one a couple times.
Yeah.
Let's go to story time. Tell us a story of how an apparent failure set you up for later success.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think setbacks can be great teachers in our lives if we make the effort to learn from them. And I was having this conversation with my son, who's 26, a few months ago. He's a professional snowboarder. And, he's 26, I'm 62. And you don't get to be in your 50s or 60s without experiencing some setbacks, either personally, business-wise, health-wise, something that would have set you back. And probably the one that sticks out most for me in my mind was I have a mechanical engineering degree. I came out of college with an engineering degree, had a great, well-paying job as a mechanical engineer, and I realized very quickly after about 6 months, I didn't like engineering. And so I looked at a number of different things that I could do, and I thought about getting another engineering job. I thought about going back to school and getting my MBA or getting a law degree, and I decided to become a financial advisor. And the job I took at the time, I was 25 years old, was 100% commission. And I left a good paying job, was what my father did as most of his career. He was an engineer, to jump into a career I knew nothing about. I knew nothing about investments. I had never really sold anything before. On top of it being 100% commission, I had to pay $600 a month for my office and sold my car to lease a new car. So I had some cash in the bank. But after about a year, I found myself almost broke. In fact, I was broke. I remember vividly laying on my bed one day and I was looking at the ceiling, laying on my back, looking at the ceiling, and I had no money, no food, and no credit. And I thought to myself, this isn't working out for me too well. I thought maybe I just need to quit my job. But then I thought, well, then I'd have no money, no food, and no credit, and no job. That's probably not a good thing. That would probably take a bad situation and making it worse. And then I thought to myself, there are people in my office making the kind of money and having the kind of success that I want to have. So maybe it's not the job. Maybe it's me. Maybe it's something I'm doing or not doing. And that was a big turning point for me, because it was like the first time I really, as a young man, looked in the mirror and was like, what about my behavior? Which is why the book Atomic Habits resonates for me. It's like, what about my behaviors contributing to my success, or in my case, my failure? And once I started to grasp that it was my behavior, I started to change that behavior. And with the change in behavior came a change in my results.
What kind of changes were you making in your behavior?
I focused on what mattered. I focused on, instead of being busy, I focused on what really mattered to growing what was then my business, my practice as a financial advisor.
Give us some examples of what really mattered.
As a financial advisor, there are 6 key activities. So it's lead generation, setting appointments, conducting meetings, doing case analysis, implementing your recommendations, and providing client service. So what I looked at in the mirror was, how much of my time am I spending on those 6 areas, and specifically lead generation and setting appointments, because I had no clients to service. And what I focused on was increasing my time there. And that then led to success in the other 4 or 5 areas. So instead of feeling busy, going to class, answering email, reading about investments, which are all important things as a financial advisor, they weren't necessarily things that were going to generate any revenue or help me be successful.
Let's keep on talking about investments. What would you say is the most worthwhile investment that you've ever made?
I'd say consistently investing myself. So I had a guy who worked for me years ago. He was 80. His name was Charlie. And Charlie used to say that when your memories outnumber your dreams, you're getting old. And so I think there's always things to be learning in life, no matter what your age or what stage of life you're in. I think people want to be in the groove, right? They want to, get life down to a system, or, life should be getting easier. I think wisdom is knowing whether or not you're in the groove or in the rut. And too many people don't know the difference. A lot of people, I think, find themselves in a rut. They're not happy in their lives, but they don't necessarily take the time to look in the mirror or necessarily know what to do to change that and change their behavior. I love change when I get to stay the same and everybody else has to change. But that's not the way that life works. If I want my life to be different, I got to start to change some of my behavior, and behavior involves me being self-aware. Like, what behaviors are helping me? What behaviors are holding me back? And what used to work for me may not be working for me now. I had a client years ago who he was very, very successful, 45 years old, but wanted to have a family, had no relationships outside of business, made probably $2 million a year, but was very unhappy because all he did was work. And so we were talking about this pattern. I mean, he would literally come home from the office, eat dinner, go to his home office, and wake up on his desk at 3 o'clock in the morning. So he would work like all night long. And this is a guy who made $2 million a year, clearly very successful, but he was noticing this pattern of he was always working. So I said, Jeff, where did you learn that? Because every patterning we have in life is a pattern because at some point it worked for us. Without any hesitation, he said, well, I'm dyslexic. And so to get through college, I had to work 2 or 3 times harder than everybody else to get through college. And that was a pattern he needed in college, but it was a pattern he continued well into his 40s that wasn't serving him well. And so we tend to do what we've always done. We're creatures of habit. 90% of the way we live our lives each day comes out of a part of our brain called the basal ganglia. That's the habit center part of our brain. So if we want to change our behavior, it's actually rewiring the habit center part of our brain, and it's hard to do, which is why I think the Atomic Habits book is so helpful, is because it breaks down like how to begin to do that. We like to say, think to perform. Changing behavior is simple, but not easy. Simple and easy are not synonymous. If you've ever tried to break a bad habit, like stopping smoking, I used to chew tobacco 30 years ago. If you ever tried to break a bad habit, you know how hard that is. Stopping smoking is you stop this. But there's a whole bunch of psychology that goes into a bad habit that's hard to break. So I'd say the investment in myself and learning and growing as a person, it kind of helps me progress in life, whether it be personally or professionally.
In the last 5 years, what new belief, behavior, or habit has most improved your life?
I saw that question and I had a really good answer, and it just escapes me, but let's come back to that if we can.
What are some bad recommendations you hear in your area of expertise?
So I coach executives and business owners to help them accelerate the growth of their business. And a pattern I see oftentimes, several patterns I see. One is they don't spend time with their people. So if you're any good at what you do, whether you're a plumber, a baker, a financial advisor, a lawyer, an accountant, it doesn't matter. You write software. If you're any good at that, you're going to end up with a team of people around you. And that leading and developing people is a different job than writing software or being a lawyer. And a lot of times what I see is the habits of the entrepreneur began earlier in their business, which is talking to customers, spending time with clients, and they have a hard time spending time leading and developing their people. And as your business, your team grows, you've got to treat your team and your people as valuable as your top clients. because they need your help in leadership and direction. More of your job at that point becomes working through people. So we talk about you get paid when you start your business for doing things. When your team grows and your organization grows, you get paid for getting things done. Getting things done involves me working through people. Doing stuff means me doing things personally. So back to my financial advisor example, I made phone calls. I set appointments. But as I became successful as a financial advisor, I had my staff do that, right? I spend most of my time either leading my staff or my time with my clients. And that, I think, is a shift that many business owners have a hard time making. I'd say the second common mistake I see is they underappreciate the impact their own behavior has on their team. So how I treat people, how I carry myself, it's the whole leadership by example. It matters. We're influenced all the time by what we read, who we hang out with, what we watch on TV, the music we listen to. So if we're influenced by that, and some of our behavior is observable by other people, well, we're leading and influencing all the time, whether we intend to or not. I remember when my son was 4 years old, he was walking down the stairs and our large dog bumped into him. He was 4 years old. And I heard him, I was in the kitchen, I heard him say, God damn it, Nick. And my wife looks at me, she goes, he sounds just like you.
Just like you.
Right? And so that's the, as parents, we get that, our kids are going to adopt our behaviors, whether we intend for them to do it or not. Some of them are good, hopefully, but they're going to adopt some of our bad behaviors. And so that's, I think, for executives and business owners, it's, if I expect people to be on time, I need to be on time. I'll never forget one of my first big learnings as a leader. I was promoted to lead a group of financial advisors. I was 28, and I had about 25 people that I was responsible for leading. I was one of their peers. And so I got promoted to lead these 25 people. And I remember we used to have a district meeting every Monday at 9 a.m. So I show up my first Monday morning at 9, actually I was there 10 minutes early, got there at 8:50. I got my, agendas. This is when you printed agendas. And I got there early. I'm ready to go. And I'm looking at my watch at 9 o'clock. There's nobody in the room. At 9:05, a couple of people straggle in. 9:10, 9:15, finally at 9:20, the room's full. By this time, I'm pissed. It's 9:20. And I look at my watch and I asked the group, I said, what time is it? Somebody says it's 9:20. I said, what time does this meeting start? And they said 9 a.m. I said, okay, from now on, we start on time. And one of my buddies in the back of the room, who was one of my colleagues, now I'm his boss, raises his hand. He goes, I don't know what the big deal is. You were always late for this meeting before.
Ouch. Oh, man, called out.
Yep.
We interrupt your regularly scheduled program for a public service announcement. We're going to get right back into this show, but I wanted to ask you a question. If you have been listening to the show for any amount of time and you've picked up even one single tip, then I need your help. Get the word out. Tell people about resultsleader.fm. Share it on social media. Share it on your email. Share it anywhere. Hashtag resultsleaderfm. Now let's jump back into the interview. Let's talk about results. Why do results matter, Chuck?
Well, results matter because it's indication of change, right? This gets back to this concept of growth. Goal achievement follows the law of cause and effect. So I got to do something different today to create a different result in my life tomorrow. So how do I know if that result is happening? Well, I got to measure that. So we measure our cholesterol, we measure our weight, we measure our revenue, we measure our profitability, not because that's all there is. So a business does not exist to make money, but it has to make money to exist. So we measure results to see whether we're progressing. So, I don't care what kind of business you're in, you're trying to, I'm assuming for most businesses, impact your clients and your customers in a positive way. Well, one of the ways you measure that is revenue. One of the ways you measure that is how many customers do we have? But that's not the reason you exist. And so our vision at it and Think to Perform is to enhance the world by improving the decision-making and performance of the individuals and organizations we touch. That's our vision statement. So enhancing the world is a big phrase. It's a big statement. And we happen to measure that through things like revenue. Are we growing revenue? Are we impacting more people? So how many people have used our stuff? How many countries have those people come from? But that's not the reason we exist. It's because it's a way to measure, are we executing on our vision? So results matter, and by the way, numbers don't lie, but numbers don't tell the whole story. So a lot of times what I see is people look at a number and then they draw conclusions about that number. What I found is before you draw conclusions, you probably want to peel that onion back and find out, why is that number? What's happening there? What's causing that? Before we assume anything, let's figure out what's driving that number. I know you asked about mistakes earlier. A lot of new managers use numbers to micromanage people. Well, you didn't make enough phone calls. You're not generating enough revenue. Your sales suck. Whatever that might be. That doesn't inspire people. That doesn't get best efforts, right? The reason you collect data and the reason you look at results is to help as a leader identify where the bottlenecks are. So if I can look at your results and say, okay, how's it going, Jonathan? It's not to beat you up, it's to figure out like what's going right and what's not going right. With what's not going right, I want to help you fix that. And so in leadership in particular, especially if you're leading more than one person, if I've got Jonathan and I've got Chuck and I've got 6 other people doing the same job, well, your bottlenecks may be different than Chuck's bottlenecks. But if I can figure out what you're doing well and have you teach the rest of the team, spread that best practice, well, now we're helping everybody get better. And that's really, I think, the goal of tracking results is to figure out like what's going well, why is it going well, and if it's not going well, why is it not going well, and how can we fix that? So if you don't pay attention to results, you kind of miss that opportunity. I mentioned my background's engineering. So, I have a problem-solving orientation. Well, as an engineer, you have to have some data before you can solve a problem. And I think too many times, especially people who've been experienced, been at this for a while, they don't really take a hard look at the data and the results change, but they don't really know why. Like the industry's shifted or the consumer demands have changed. And for most industries, consumers have a lot of choice. So if I'm not in touch with those changes, then I could be missing out. My business could fall out of favor.
You sound like an engineer. I'm reading Jack Welch, man, and the way that they built up GE, and it reminds me of that. Find the best practices, the people that are doing the best, bring it back to the rest of the team. But the only way to do it is to analyze everything.
Well,
so it's very powerful.
It's back to my failure story, or whatever the question was, setback story. What I realized is like, if I started copying the people that were doing really well, I started to see some of the same success. Like most businesses are copycat businesses. I work in real estate, technology, financial services, restaurants, retail. I've worked in Europe. I've worked in Canada, the United States. And I don't understand every business. I don't mean to claim that, but I do have to, there are some similarities and consistencies in how you grow a business. You have to market. You have to generate interest. You have to bring on new clients. The service or product you provide then may be different. The way you attract them might be different. But I think, there is some consistency. So back to your earlier question about the habit that I've cultivated, not most recently, but probably in the last 18 years since I've been in executive coaching, the habit or skill I've tried to work on is asking better questions. And I ask better questions because I don't want to assume I know what's going on. So I don't know your business as well as you do. You live it 24/7. And so I want to be careful about assuming I know what's going on in your business. Number 2, I ask questions because I want to help you discover the answer, not give you the answer. I'm not trying to develop dependence on me as a coach, because if I'm right, then you become dependent on me. If I'm wrong, then I'm the guy to blame. So what I'm trying to do is help you and appreciate the fact that I don't understand your business as well as you do. So I've got to be really good at being a detective and asking great questions.
How do you define that? Like, how do you improve your question asking process, I guess, is the question I'm trying to ask.
Yeah. That's a great question. How do I improve it? I think about, and when I'm in a conversation with somebody, as I'm doing right now, what is the question that's not being asked? Because usually people come to me with issues. Every business has issues. There's no perfect business, just like there's no perfect person. So there are issues that you will see in your business, but then there'll be issues that you don't see. And so what I got to figure out is, what are the issues with you, by the way? What are the issues you're not seeing that may be causing other problems? And so how do I get better asking questions?
Well, I hear it, and you're not letting it out there, but it's been in your experience over the years asking the unasked question and seeing the other angle.
Right.
So it's after having so many cases, so much time on the job, saying, okay, what are some things that these guys may have had in common, and being able to
what are they not considering? What are they not thinking about?
Right.
A big question that a lot of people generally don't think about is why. So I get business owners, executives that they want to grow their business. They want to grow their revenue. And I'll ask them why. Why do you want to grow your revenue? Well, because we want to make more money. Why? Well, because we want to be more profitable. Why is that? Like there's like a level of why. And, you know, for most successful people, I just had this conversation with somebody the other day, they make plenty of money. So doubling their income for most people isn't going to substantially, most successful people, I should say it that way. I'm not talking about median income. I'm talking about people who make high 6 figures, 7 figures, 8 figures. It's not going to change their lifestyle. So making more money becomes an empty chase. They've got food, they got shelter, they drive nice cars, they have a vacation home or two. So the why question is really important. And there's usually takes like 4, 5, 6 whys. And sometimes people get annoyed. Well, because I want to be, well, why? Because I want to be number one. Well, why do you want to be number one? I had this conversation with a client the other day. And what it came down to really was he was doing it for recognition from other people. He wanted recognition, which is not a bad thing. I mean, we all like recognition from time to time. But if that's your only driver, it becomes an empty choice, right? Because once I get to making $1 million a year, great. I mean, good for you. But then you want to make 2 million. Well, I mean, there's got to be more of an internal driver. And that's where the why question, I think, helps get to, like, why is it important to me that I want to do this? And that's where I think people think about the what. They don't always think about the why.
Powerful. Let's talk about you, brother. What area of your business would you like better results?
I wish I was better at developing our own people internally. And I've started that about 5 or 6 years ago, where I realized that I was doing a lot of work alone. And I was doing well, but I thought about my life 10 or 15 years from now, and I realized I didn't want to keep doing what I was doing. Not that I didn't like what I was doing. I didn't want to be doing the same thing 10 years from now, that I wanted our company to grow. Well, if I wanted our company to grow and I wanted to change how I spent my time, I needed to develop other people to be as good or better than me. And so I've been on that path for the last 5 or 6 years, is how can I make other people in our company as successful or more successful than I am? Because that's, as an owner of a company, that's really what I want, is the company to grow. Back to our vision statement of enhancing the world. If you want to enhance the world, it's not going to be because like 1 or 2 guys or 1 or 2 people did it. I got to like have more people on this ship with me, and they got to be, able to do as well or better than I have. And it's kind of like being a parent, like you want your kids to live a better life than we had. So that's the path I'm on, and I can still get better at that.
What results are you most proud of?
I'd say my kids. I have 3 children. I have a son who's 26 and then 2 daughters who are 24 and 17. And I think what I'm most proud of is they're all independent. Both my adult children are on their own, successful in different ways. My daughter runs her own jewelry business in Brooklyn, New York. My son's a pro snowboarder. My youngest daughter is going to be a senior in high school, or is a senior in high school. And she's going to go on to college and kind of cut her own path. But they're self-reliant. They understand how to work hard, and they're not afraid of it.
Any parting thoughts you want to share with the results leaders who are listening to us right now?
Yeah, I would think about results in your life more holistically. So I know, especially in the United States, we're very like financially driven. I know I was at one point in my life. And what I have found is when people chase one aspect of their life, I'm not just talking about money. I'm talking about if I spent all my time just with my family, my career would suffer. Well, if I spend all my time on my career, my family suffers. And so I think the difficult part about life is how do you achieve balance? And balance does not mean like 50-50. Balance is knowing like what parts of my life, personally, professionally, my family, my relationships, my health, like how do I help all of that be successful? Because what I've seen is when people abandon parts of their life to focus on other parts of their life, it usually comes back to haunt them. I saw an interview years ago with a woman named Christine Lagarde. Christine Lagarde she's French. She ran the International Monetary Fund. Her husband was a French ambassador, I don't know, somewhere in Europe. Anyway, Christine was an attorney. She built her own law firm. Her husband was successful. She had kids. Then she runs this International Monetary Fund, which loans money to third world countries, like the billions and trillions of dollars to help them build out their infrastructure. So anyway, they're interviewing her and they said, God, Christine, it seems like you have it all. Is it possible to have it all? And I'll never forget her answer. She kind of looked away for a second. And she said, yes, just not all at the same time. And so I think you just have to consider like, I want to focus on my business, but life is, I'm sure you've heard, is a marathon, not a sprint. So, God willing, I'm going to live well into my 90s, or maybe even over 100 years old. So, I want to make sure that I am successful in all aspects of my life, if that's possible. So what does that look like? If I want to be successful in business, how do I be successful in my personal life at the same time?
Powerful, brother. I know our listeners are going to want more from you. Where can they get it?
You can go to thinktoperform.com. That's think, the number 2, perform, PERFORM, thinktoperform.com. Certainly you can email me, find me on the web. There's videos on YouTube. You can go to our website, do our values card exercise. That would be really powerful to see what is in fact important to you. It's a free exercise on our website. It takes you about 20 minutes to identify your top 5 values. Knowing our values is important because it guides our decision making. So most people, when you ask them if they have values, they act kind of insulted, like, well, yeah, what do you think, I don't have values? Then you say, well, what are they? And that's where it gets kind of fuzzy. Well, family, integrity, but there's more values than that. So go to the values exercise, identify your top 5 values, and then start to use them in guiding your decision making.
I dig it, man. And mine are faith, family, fitness, and finances.
Perfect. Mine are family, spirituality, health, integrity, and meaningful work. Those are my 5.
There you go. Been a pleasure having you on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we will.
Oh, and by the way, I do have a new book coming out in March. You can pre-order it on Amazon. The title of the book is Don't Wait for Somebody Else to Fix It.
Love it. We will have links to everything in the show notes. Thank you, Chuck, for hanging out with us. And thank you, Results Leaders, for tuning in. That is a wrap for another edition of ResultsLeader.fm. If you are out there getting results for your clients and you want to be featured on the show, go to ResultsLeader.fm now and apply to be on the show. And if you love what you're hearing, share the show, give us a rating and review, do anything to help us get the message out there. Thought leadership is easy, but results leadership is hard. We'll catch you on the next one.
This is thepodcastfactory.com.